Grain is primarily a PLG company, but we started kind of working an inbound sales process because we were getting a lot of people who wanted to talk to sales reps for various reasons, help setting up questions. And we had initially just built a sales team by kind of getting our head of operations and my chief of staff and me and kind of everyone to swarm sales. And it was chaos and it wasn't very successful. And so I think you suggested that maybe we should start using Spice despite us being kind of early stage. And it's been awesome. And so I thought it'd be awesome to get you on a webinar and just kind of chat about Spice and why it's a great framework even for early stage companies or startups, SMBs, and not just kind of huge sales companies.
Before we go there, like what you said, it was chaos. I think that's the word you used, or it was.
Yeah.
What did that feel like? And what did it keep you from doing?
Yeah. So the things that were, what it felt like was as the CEO, I had a very hard time understanding why some deals were closing, why some deals were not closing, why we were working some deals and not others, because essentially everyone was kind of using their own judgment after basically the way we had like a round robin Calendly where people would request a demo, it would get booked on one of our calendars. And then we would just take it based on basically the availability of whoever was available that was helping out sales.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was hard for me to understand, is this person a better salesperson than this person? That's why they're closing more deal. Are they getting better deals? Like, it was very much felt like a black hole. And I didn't know we would hit our numbers sometimes we wouldn't. I didn't understand why. It just felt like a process I didn't know how to fix or improve or optimize.
And Jeff, do you have a formal sales background or no?
I don't, but I've been a founder for about 6 years now. So I've done a lot of sales just in the founder seat.
Got it.
But okay. Yeah, never, and have had a couple experiences building early sales teams, but I've never operated like a large sales company.
And just to help the listeners here. I haven't operated a large sales team. And how big is the sales team now when you're starting to feel like, gosh, I'm not sure why things are working, why they're not.
There are three people working on sales. Yeah.
Great. So you got three people. I'm guessing, I'm just totally guessing, you haven't told me this, but I'm guessing the person with the highest likelihood of closing any deal at that point was you?
Yeah, basically. I mean, there might be another person on the team that would contest this, but yes.
Yeah, but go listen, whoever you are. And then after that, it's round robin and people are doing whatever, but you're not sure it's a formulaic approach to succeeding. And
not only not sure, is it just wasn't. For sure it wasn't.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. And the thing that's interesting is I'd always assumed that SPICED, or not SPICED, but sales methodologies, BANT, MEDDIC, MEDPIC, were something that you should do when you're bigger. I've got a big sales team and now it's time to adopt a methodology. I think it was you that got me turned on to this idea, especially with Spice, that you can start it as early as possible. And actually there's benefits to starting early as possible.
Amazing. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Hopefully the users are relating, or the listeners are relating to this pain. I think we've all been there, early stage. I can't scale something that's chaos. That would be stacking chaos on top of chaos. So,
and the funny thing is I'd actually already made that mistake before. We tried to start building a sales team. We'd raised a Series A, investors you got to scale. And so we went out and hired a sales team, and similar type of thing. Just the people we were stacking on were not successful without a clear understanding of why. And so I knew I didn't want to make that mistake again, but what I didn't realize was that something like Spice or methodology would be a key to unlocking. Now, it didn't solve all our problems, but it was definitely a key to unlocking and helping us take this step in the right direction where we can scale.
Love it. All right. So now I'm really
yeah. So basically we talked I think also over tacos, 180 tacos. Then
twice? I forgot about that.
yeah. That was at 180 tacos. Yes. Process is better though. So we were at 180 tacos, and I come and I tell my team, hey, we really need to start doing Spiced. It's kind of funny because I still wasn't sold on Spice, but we knew we wanted to build a feature in Grain that used Spice. And so I was like, okay, might as well dog food it. So it kind of took the dog fooding to kind of make me a conviction and kind of get the team on board. Mm-hmm. And so we started using it, and it was really a game changer. The thing that's interesting to me about Spiced is that when you look at a lot of, I call them startup-y frameworks, you have Lean Canvas, Steve Blank has a framework, there's the folks who do the business model canvas have a framework called like the value proposition canvas. There's all these like startup frameworks that like are meant to help founders and other kind of early stage companies really nail product market fit. What's interesting is I kind of use those frameworks to guide my sales process because I assumed they were really similar. And I found that like as I learned more about Spice, that it really emphasizes critical things, at least for SaaS businesses, that those other frameworks miss. For example, the idea of a critical event is something that you won't see in a lot of those other frameworks that to me was super enlightening to us.
Wow.
And because like what's interesting is like when you're doing research as an early stage founder, you'll get a lot of people that's like, oh yeah, that's a big problem. Oh yeah, like that, huge pain around that, et cetera. But once you start building and you keep going down the line, you're like, well, then why won't they buy? And a lot of times it's because of you're missing a critical event. There's not something that's actually driving the purchasing decision. So critical event was really, really important to us. The difference between pain and impact was also like a really critical insight that helped us learn, not just to build our sales process, but even for me as a founder to like do discovery on product market fit. Although I'd say we're kind of post early product market fit, it still has been helpful as we've kind of tried to expand our product market fit.
Yeah. So do you, Jeff, are we assuming everyone knows what SPICED is and what it stands
No, we shouldn't. Well, you should pull me back. So you want to just give a quick primer on like Spiced? I'm
Yeah,
telling the story and getting into the content.
I love
So
it. Well, the critical event thing, I want to come back to that. That's yeah, I want to come back to that. So SPICED is just an acronym. You mentioned BANT, Medic. BANT, definitely not for any early stage founders. Do not do that. That's like B stands for budget. And one of my favorite sales leaders used to say, oh, that's like asking for the W-2 on the first date. Like, no, let's wait on that. But
do you think BANT's good in any circumstance? Like you say, definitely not for early stage, but that's probably just a general problem with the methodology, right?
I think it is. I really do. I mean,
because it kind of assumes already willingness and intent to buy. It's like if I'm a very motivated buyer who's for sure going to buy your solution, great. But that's a great relevant question. But I think it gets like causality all wrong.
All wrong. And if you're going to go for an assumption that they already have intent and they already have budget, I would use Medic over BANT.
Interesting.
That's a qualification framework, like BANT is. SPICED is more of like a customer journey framework, as you've said. Like it's not only about kind of qualifying you up front. Do you have real budget and intent? It's really about just trying to get to know you. So as the situation, like let me just ask you some questions about how you're experiencing life and how you're experiencing kind of your how you're trying to get forward in whatever the job to be done is that you're pursuing. You mentioned product market fit, so I'm obviously going to be in the zip code of something that I think my product can do, but let me just hear from you. Like, let me ask you a question, let me ask you a follow-up question, let me make sure I understand kind of what your day in the life might look like or how you might be doing it today. Those are just background situation questions. Then P is like, well, what's not working for you? Like, that's pain. P is pain. Like, what's not working for you? Where does that break down? Where do you feel like you're missing something? And then I get the prospect to articulate that back to me, and then I repeat it back to her. And now I've got now we've had a substantive conversation around situation. Like, okay, now I'm grounded. Thank you for catching me up. I understand what you're trying to do. And where's that not working? And now I've heard it in her words, and I can play it back to her. Okay, so now we've got a shared understanding around pain. And I'm like, well, what what would it be worth if we could figure that out? Like if you could get past that pain, past that 17-step process for getting orders fulfilled,
right.
past whatever that thing is that's slowing you down or giving you pain, and then I try to and that what would it be worth is my impact. I as impact. So now I got situation, pain, and impact. Sometimes it's hard to get to impact. You may have to ask the question a few different ways, but depending on who you have on the call, they're definitely looking for something. They wouldn't be wasting their time on a call with you.
There's some business result that they care about.
Something, you're right. Like it could be personal, it could be company, it could be emotional, it could be rational. There's some sort of impact that they're looking for that the previous approach is not doing it for them. And if they could just have this approach, here would be the impact. Okay, cool. So now I got language around that. By the way, situation, pain, and impact is going to extend beyond the initial sale, right?
Right. Yeah. I love Yako's principle. That's any recurring revenue has to have recurring impact. And I
Yeah.
think that's just such a great first principle for any SaaS founder or business owner.
Yeah, like I'm gonna talk you into it, and then you're gonna get tricked into paying me money. Like that's gonna last.
Time and time again because you like your CSM or whatever. I think people believe this sometimes.
So, and then you get to, so that's SPI, and then you get to what you said, critical event, which is, hey, what would, um, by when do we need to solve this? Like,
Yeah, there's some trigger forcing some deadline.
yeah. Oh, I'm getting ready for a board meeting, or oh, I got to wrap up my books, or oh, I've got to,
I've got a renewal coming up, or I've hired someone new, or there's a deadline.
there's
Yeah,
something in their business that's kind of driving urgency here. And
yeah,
sometimes if you can't get impact and you can get critical event, then you can come back to impact and say, hey,
right.
if you don't solve it by then, what happens? Oh, if don't solve it by then, I lose my job. Okay, cool. Now I know that's it.
Now
Right?
you really got to solve that problem, and you know the timeline, right?
Right. And then decision is just, the decision process. This is actually what Medic is really good at. You know, who's making this decision? How is this decision made? Which approvers do I have to have on board? What kind of budget approval levels do I? And if you're selling an enterprise, there's a bunch of other things, like InfoSec and legal. And so let me just understand that. And I can ask, and this has been drilled into me with the formal sales training background. But to your point, not everybody has that. So critical event and decision are things that we don't really think about as founders or as product people or as,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what my experience has been. It's just not something I had ever been trained to really think about, but it's what matters at the end of the day. Like obviously the other two are important and essential, but you sometimes will find a lot of pain points that actually don't have a critical event or a decision maker around that pain point. And that's where like I actually wasted 2 years of my life building a business because of that exact problem, to be honest.
So sorry.
Like, no, it's okay. It's just I basically learned that there's a lot of product managers that had a very big pain point, but there wasn't a corresponding like consistent decision maker who had the budget to solve the problem, and there was no critical event driving the impact.
Yeah.
So super important. And to actually go back, someone in the chat asked, Matt said, "What's your advice for explaining why BANT is outdated to those who come from old school software?" And I'd love to hear your thought to that question. But one thing that stands out to me is like with BANT talks about a timeline, right, as being an important thing. But I think thinking about the decision criteria as a more broad thing. And the thing that's funny about BANT is like budget and timeline are part of decision, but in SPICE that comes last because you need to uncover everything else prior to that. And that's like the last thing you try to uncover. Whereas like in BANT, it's like go straight for budget. And I guess BANT doesn't necessarily imply chronology, but then it's like, it's kind of a confusing framework.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I could say it better than you. It doesn't imply chronology, but it kind of does. In budget, authority, need, and timing. I mean, how about need is kind of what's the problem that we're solving. But to your point,
need is kind of a compilation of pain and impact in a way, maybe.
Kind of presumes. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I was going to say, and then to me, like in decision of SPICE, what I really love, what I found clarifying in SPICE is you have who's the buyer. I think you call it the buyer committee, but it's basically who are the people who are involved in the decision-making process. What's the buying criteria? And then what's the process? And those are all three separate things. Mm-hmm. And to me, in BANT, budget and timeline are just maybe a part of, it's critical event is kind of a much better way of framing timeline, I think. And then budget is a part of the decision-making process. So
I don't know. I mean, explaining it to an old school software person is going to be tough. Like, I don't know. Like, sorry, Matt. But actually, that sales leader that I'm talking about is an old school software person. He's like, that's like starting off your first date with, may I have your W-2? Like, I'm going to qualify you. Do you make enough money from reviews?
I'm going to qualify you by saying you make enough money to matter to me. I love that. That's actually a really good analogy because that's kind of what it is like, because you're thinking about the sales as like kind of a relationship dance in some ways. And it's kind of a weird place to start out. Also, I'm getting a little bit of feedback that you're quiet. Is there any way to turn up your mic, Dave? I think people can hear you, but maybe just a bit quiet.
Oh, I'm not using my fancy mic.
Don't stress about it because I think you can. Yeah.
I could reconfigure, but I jumped into this hot. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I think maybe if you just lean in, I can hear you a little bit better when
You
you
got
lean
it.
in. But
Okay, I'll
yeah,
speak louder.
super awesome. So I think we've introduced Spice now
Yeah.
and kind of talked about what are the benefits of starting early. There's one thing you mentioned that I thought was really cool that maybe we touch on, and then we can talk about tips for implementing. Is you mentioned how Spice isn't just a qualification framework. It is a customer journey framework. Um, and as startups and kind of SMBs, it can be used in not just the sales, but also customer success and even product. Can you speak to, have you seen people do that successfully, or speak to your experience with
Oh
that?
my gosh, totally. It's like it's huge, man. And you know this, so we're just having a conversation here. But you know, there's a framework called the bow tie framework. That's like the traditional sales and marketing funnel, um, turned on its side, and then the tip of that funnel is still the initial commit or the close, but then that funnel opens back up and it looks like a bow tie, and that
Right,
opening
right,
back up is the rest of the customer journey. So right, so that's how do they get onboarded, how do they achieve first impact, how do they you know how do they drive adoption, and then to your point on what am I going to renew, and then
yeah,
how am I
exactly.
going to expand. And I promise you, I'm not going to renew because I have budget. That is not what I'm going to renew.
It's like, oh, I have budget. I might as well just pay more for this.
Hello, do you have budget? Yes. Okay, then you're going to renew, right? You're like, no. Like, I'm not going to renew the thing that like caused me pain for a year or that I had on a shelf for a year. I'm going to renew the thing that actually delivered impact to me. So that's how impact actually translates across the knot of the bow tie. It's something that we qualify on up front. Situation, pain, impact. Let me understand that. Okay, cool. So if we can achieve this, then we'll get this impact. That's what we're going to purchase on. But that's also what we're going to onboard to. It's what we're going to drive adoption around. It's what we're going to drive renewal on. It's what we're going to drive expansion on. If
Right,
that
right.
common thread goes all the way across, which unfortunately doesn't, I mean, you could say the M in medic is, metrics is, is an indication of impact. Okay, got it. But I just like the idea of impact translating all the way across the bow tie.
Yeah. So I totally agree with that. I love that. So thinking about implementing Spice, this is where I think your experience is super valuable. I only have an N of one on this. I think you have an N of a lot more. I've only experienced myself.
At
So
least
if I'm if I'm like an early stage founder, or maybe an SMB with a small sales team, maybe I'm a head of sales and I'm just trying to build out a sales team. What should I start like today? What's the tip I can start with today to start building out my sales team? Or start implementing Spice on my sales team.
well, you're going to want to train on it, and you probably have enough from this um, call to do that. And if you
Yeah.
don't, just go to YouTube, go to Google, look up Spiced. You'll find a million things on there. There's also open courses that you can take. You can get people enrolled in. There's even a free micro course on Spiced that's out
Nice.
there. But you're just going to want to train on it. You want to have a common language because later on, like if you're the founder or the head of sales, later on when you're in the situation that you were in earlier, Jeff, you're going to want to go have a conversation with the rep and say, hey, I see this deal in your pipeline. Can you tell me a little bit about that deal? And you're going to want her to communicate with you. And if she doesn't, you're going to want to qualify her on this. So can we back up a little? What's the situation there? What's the pain and what's the impact? And then she uses some words like, I'll give you an example from my past. Someone selling to Johnsonville Sausage Company. I don't know if you've ever seen Johnsonville, like brats or something.
Yeah.
It's in the
Yeah.
Midwest,
Yeah.
like Wisconsin or something. Hey, so why is this deal going to close? Well, I like brats and he likes brats. No, that's not why it's going to close. I promise you, that's not why. No, we got a thing going on. Like we both like sausage. No, that's not why it's going to close. It's going to
Right. Right.
close because you've uncovered situation, pain, and impact. So, um, you're going to want that common language. You're going to want to train on it first. Then you're going to want to inspect on it, meaning you're going to have conversations with your reps using that language, and then you're going to coach on it. Hey, okay, so we haven't uncovered impact. I get it. So, why don't we role play how you might do that? Like, I know that they're just trying to go feature by feature, but that's not going to get them impact. Let's talk about what is the impact and let's try to get them to impact. So you're going to train on it, inspect on it, coach on it.
And so first it's kind of like you just want to get the reps starting to ask the questions to uncover the information by training on them.
Yep.
and then inspecting on it is looking at the deals and seeing, or even just talking a conversation with the rep and seeing what is being uncovered.
Yep.
And then coaching is that kind of giving feedback when maybe the questions are being asked, or they're being asked in ways that maybe is awkward or not getting the real information, et cetera. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Yes, that's a good idea. What if you could have an AI agent listen to the calls and pick up what was actually uncovered, and then you could coach on that?
Hey, I mean, that's an awesome idea. I love that idea. I will show that. We can show that idea in just a second, but I
Yeah.
want to just focus on the tips here for a second. So that makes a lot of sense. One question I have is like, when do you go from just like, let's start uncovering spiced? Because that's to me where I think it starts, right? Is let's get the questions, let's get in discovery, let's get the data, to having a point of view with regards to a process like qualification, for example. Because for example, and maybe we're misapplying, but we realized in our process that certain pain points or impact we're not that good at delivering. And so when that gets uncovered, we're kind of like, actually, that's probably not the most qualified customer for us. So we actually kind of deprioritize those deals. Curious if that's how you see an effective way to use it and when that should come in the process.
Yeah, so now we get to a marrying of that bow tie data model and this SPICED methodology. The bow tie data model actually has, demarcations along the way: education, awareness, decision, and then onboarding, adoption, renewal, expansion, right? So from left to right.
Can I interrupt real fast? Just I'll do a kind of what you did earlier about like explaining the frameworks. I love the bow tie. For those who are not super familiar with it, it's like basically it is a way to think about an entire journey of your customer for SaaS businesses or recurring businesses. And like Dave mentioned, is it kind of starts with the front. Usually when we talk a lot about funnels in SaaS, right, where you have your top of your funnel where it's, awareness, education, selection. And what the bow tie says is there's actually another funnel that tends to expand after selection, which is the part about delivering impact and renewals. And so that's what Dave is talking about. I mean, he kind of explained already, but just to say, we've started using the bow tie in our business too, to map our metrics across the entire journey. It's been super awesome, super, super helpful for us to really understand what's going on in our business.
Yeah. So now you marry those two things. And I had another sales leader early in my career who used to say, we are not an activity-based sales team. We are an outcomes-based sales team. And that didn't mean anything to me when I was 32 years old or whatever.
Right.
I need a shocker. I'm older than 32. I know that's a big shock.
I mean, you don't look a day over 30, Dave.
That's right. And what he meant is like, you don't move something from awareness to education or from education to selection just because you did a demo.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's
because that's how it almost always is, right? It's like you've got your stages in your CRM and HubSpot. I finished that that activity, go to the next one. I finished that one. Oh, it didn't work. Go to this one.
Right. Hey, I did a discovery call. Cool. Move them into education. Hey, I did my demo. Cool. Move them into selection. They might not be ready for selection. Well, so this flips that whole thing. Like,
right.
It's like we want to hear what they're saying. We want them to have articulated situation, pain, and impact. And at a certain point, we're like, okay, I think now we're ready to move into education. I'm going to qualify them up front. They're a good use case and a good ICP. Got it. Then I'm going to move them into education. Then I'm going to make sure I understand pain, pain and impact like really directly. Then I'm going to move them into selection. And then I'm going to understand critical event and decision. And then I'm going to put them into my forecast. And I'm only going to forecast based on the fact that I kind of have understood these things, not on the fact that I did a demo call.
I love that. So you're essentially, instead of just finishing a step in the process, you're using SPICE as a stage gate to move people in your sales process.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. That's so great. Any other tips before we kind of move to the last little bit about AI and SPICED?
Is now a good time to talk about what happens when you put SPICED in, or should we save that for the end?
No, let's do that. And then we can talk about how wouldn't it be nice if an AI could help us do some of the tracking automatically.
Crazy idea. I can't wait. I actually can't wait to have that conversation with are you planning on screen sharing on this?
Yeah. I'll screen share in the last couple of minutes.
It's gonna be so good. So we did a study of just over this is going to blow people's minds who are running small business. By the way, I've been a small business founder. I've run it with just me selling, with 2, with 3. Um, just over 50,000 closed opportunities. That's a lot.
Yeah.
50,000.
Wow. That's huge. Yep. A
Yeah.
lot of data points.
And we did a study on what happens when the spiced fields in CRM are completed versus the spiced fields are not completed. And we had degrees of completion and everything in there, but just to shorthand it, when the spiced fields were completed, the win rate went up by 10%, and the deal size went up by 116%. So
Oh,
over
wow.
double.
That's wild.
So when I'm uncovering situation, pain, and impact, and then I'm closing based on situation, pain, and impact, I'm closing deals that are double the size, and I'm winning those deals 10% more often. So then you would say, and that's 50,000 closed opportunities. Like that is statistically significant, I promise you.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, all right, so everybody does that, right? No, like you got to get to it's almost linear. It's not quite linear. It starts out like, it's like we measured situation, pain, impact, critical event, decision. So that adoption kind of, I got situation and pain, I got situation, pain, and impact. If you have those 3 things, it ramps significantly. You're at about 50% of spice filled out, you get about 50% of that lift that I talked about.
Right.
And then from there, it's kind of linear to the end. Only 28% of opportunities got to that 50% mark. 28%.
Wow.
So
That's
even though the benefit's there, it's sometimes just really hard to execute on it. It's really hard to internalize it. But I can promise you, if you can get it in early, as you were talking about, build it in as a habit, building it as an inspection and coaching framework, you're going to be off to the races.
So there's some really good questions in the chat, and maybe this is a good idea for a study. But 2 folks asked basically, how would these numbers compare against other methodologies? Like, have you ever done a comparison? No idea.
No.
Yeah, I imagine that's hard to do.
Might exist. I mean, I'm sure there were other methodologies present in all of those opportunities that we measured, like the holders out might have been. I mean, so what's happening to the other? So 28% are adopting. What's happening to the other 72%? Either they're lazy or they're holding on to their own methodology.
You're saying the individual reps are just kind of using their own. Yep. Instead of the team being aligned around one methodology, they're just kind of doing their own thing.
Could be. It's a possibility. We don't know. We haven't seen
Right.
these 50,000 opportunities in deep. Well, they exist in the database, but we don't exactly know the details. But why wouldn't SPICED be in there? A, they're lazy. They just didn't run it. B,
They just didn't fill it. Yeah.
They ran it and didn't fill it in, which you're going to solve. Or C, they're just running their old play, right? Like maybe they're running a medic play or a BAMP play or something. But the aggregate benefit result of that is, if spiced, 10% higher win rate, 116% higher deal size. If not spiced, the converse of that.
So yeah, I think that is, to me, the reason why spiced. I come from consulting, and one of the things that McKinsey talks about is this idea of MECE. It's like mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. It's like basically you want your answers to have all the potential of what's causing things, and then you want your frameworks to basically isolate each of the variables so there's not overlap. Mm-hmm. And I think SPICE, to me, feels like the most MECE framework. Like Medic and MedPick and BANT feel like they're just kind of spatterings, whereas like SPICE to me kind of covers the relevant universe of solutions in a very simple way. So just like, to me, that's why it clicked so easily. And so even though I don't have the data to compare it, to me, it just feels like an easier methodology to get adherence to than like MedPick. It's like now you're asking everyone to fill out 7 variables every deal. It's just to me, the simplicity of it is really nice. And then the chronology, the logical chronology flow makes it really great. So Colton asked a question like, how do you get your sales team bought in and adopted to SPICED? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Dave, before we wrap up.
Yeah.
My little demo.
Colton, check out that Spiced Essentials. I think it's called Spiced Micro Course or something, and I'm pretty sure it's free on the Winning by Design site. And just see how we teach it. But it's a very human. It comes not only is it MECE, but it's also human. Like, why don't I learn something about you first and develop some empathy with you? Like I come from a sales background, but I converted Jeff, into a PLG guy, like, as you
Right.
know, like, and I've just completed a book on PLG, but PLG, one of the principles of PLG is empathy. Like, I got to
Hmm.
understand what problem the person is trying to solve. Like, what's the job to be done in order to then meet her where she is with a product that's actually going to do it. And it's the same thing if we're selling. Like, I'm not trying to trick her into it. I want to understand my prospect and the
Right.
situation. So when you're Colton, watch the training and see how it's done, but play into that just natural, be a human being. Like, just because we're on two sides of a Zoom call doesn't mean we're not both human beings. We're not both trying to get a job done. And so if I can understand that and demonstrate empathy, and then lean into things she cares about, which is pain and impact, not the things I care about, which is speeds and feeds and features and functions,
Right.
then I'm
Right.
then I'm going to be playing a very human role, and I'm going to close bigger deals and win more often.
Yeah, and you could maybe send them this webinar. That might help. I don't know.
There you go.
So you mentioned if people adhere to Spiced, 10% lift in win rates, almost double, more than doubling of deal sizes.
Yep.
Reason why this doesn't happen oftentimes, like you said, is they're adhering to it, but they're not putting it in their CRM. They're just not adhering to it, or maybe they're doing another play. So
Yeah.
we really wanted to kind of attack this problem, make it easy for users of Grain to adopt Spiced. And so we recently launched this feature that basically automatically tracks adherence to Spiced, because we had heard this data that basically suggests that if people simply adhere to it, they're going to be much more likely to close. And so this is not going to work. This
Oh,
is
you
the
can't.
problem. What? Oh, yeah. This is really lame. I recently switched to Arc and not Chrome, and so
Nerd.
basically I would have to quit and reopen, which maybe I'll do if people want to indulge. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'm just going to just join from Chrome. This will probably be the Swift of things. But anyway, in the meantime, while I do this, I'm just going to just kind of say, so we basically, Grain, for those who don't know, it's a AI note taker and conversational intelligence tool. And so it automatically records the calls of your sales teams. And so when we heard this study that Dave talked about for Winning by Design, we were like, man, we can really dramatically help sales teams improve this adherence, because we're getting all the data is being recorded in your calls, and with AI now we can extract these fields, and it can be easy to just in a simple way show whether or not reps are adhering to these fields.
So you mentioned I like to see which of my reps are adhering to it, and then I like to coach to it. That's exactly what I mean. I think that's a big piece of why Spice makes such a big difference, because the relevant information is in CRM. The relevant information: situation, pain, impact, critical event, decision. That is the relevant information. That is the best kind of set of information to then go inspect on and coach on. And if it's not there, I'm sorry, but not all of us grew up in sales. Like, not all of us have perfectly tuned instincts. And so when you ask someone like, hey, what do you think? Is this one going to close? And they're like, oh, yeah, totally, it's going to close. And then you don't think to ask the Johnsonville Brats question. um, they don't come up with the right stuff. So this is really helpful to I shouldn't say young, any sales professional. Like, the reason we have a sales process, the reason we have stage gates, the reason we have a methodology is to help the rep help themselves, like help them not just protect them from their own blind spots. You
Exactly.
progress this thing to stage 4, and really you forgot to figure out who the decision makers are. Like, hey, we'll just back it up. Like, let's go get those decision makers. It's a great framework.
Totally. So sharing my screen now, hopefully everyone can see it. So essentially
Yes.
this is what it looks like in Grain. These are all your active deals, and you can see on this in your dashboard, the spice column, you can see the ones here where have identified some of the spiced. A green check mark means they've all been identified. Empty circle means it's pretty much missing most of the spice data. And then if you click on a specific deal, you can actually see a summary of the situation, the pain, the impact, the critical event. That it actually extracts a summary of each of the situation, pain, impact, critical event, decision. And if you really want to go deep, you can click on any of these and it'll break it down even further, and you can see the actual source of the video where the data is coming from. So it makes it just super easy, like you said, to teach, to diagnose, and to coach on Spice. So anyone who's interested in trying it would love to help you out and get you some free access to try it out. And Spice is still amazing, and even if you don't use Grain to use it, but if you're interested, maybe it can help you out on it.
You mentioned to me, Jeff, the other day over tacos. I think we're going to just have to make that a theme. We'll just do tacos every time.
I love it. It's a good theme, not a bad one.
That this could be for, and I know this isn't only for early stage companies and first time founders. By the way, for the people listening, like we got people like, Canva and DocuSign, big companies using Spice. But what if you said, is a methodology only for a big company, or could it be for a small company? And I think you've helped solve that problem, because what if you could just get a methodology right out of the box? What if it just came with your call recording and note taking software, and then you could just start coaching to it right away. And in terms of adherence, it's more about adherence based on me already seeing what's showing up versus me having to start from scratch. I love that idea, like out of the box.
Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And, so much more amazing things we can do in that vein, like real-time AI coaching and stuff like that. And so lots of really cool things coming down the pipeline where AI can help with these methodologies. But in my opinion, with AI generally, it might change, but AI, I think, can be an augmenter and accelerator to your existing process and talent. But if you kind of don't have a good process or methodology in place, or it's just going to be, in my opinion, just fuel to the chaos. So you need to kind of build that foundation, which is why I think understanding Spice and putting it on your team are so important. Well, so I'm going to do one last little scan of the chats for Q&A before we wrap up. I know we're going a little over. Someone asked, is that what I just demoed live? Yes, it is live. It's in early access. So if you're interested in getting access, just you can send an email to us, me at jeff@grain.com, or comment on LinkedIn, and we'll get you access. We'll probably send out a link to request access to everyone who registered for this webinar. Dave, you were going to say something?
No, keep going.
As someone asked, does it work in different languages? Yes, it does. It works in many languages, most of the major ones. There might be a few we don't support. And then does it sync to HubSpot? Yes, it does sync to HubSpot. So all your Spiced information gets pushed into HubSpot, both as like a special card that I didn't show here, but also as properties. So property sync is coming out soon. We actually are doing that for Winning by Design. So thanks for the feedback, Winning by Design.
Machine readable.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks everyone so much for coming. Dave, it's been super fun chatting. We'll have to do this again, maybe about the bow tie or something like that, or maybe Spice 2.0.
I love it. So cool to be partnered with you, Jeff, and the whole Grain family. Like, you're doing amazing things. Whenever you have momentum like you have, with kind of word of mouth spreading adoption and the growth rates that you have something special. You found product market fit, and you're delivering impact, whether that's through sales led or product led motion. You guys have both going, and I consider Grain one of the cool kids.
Thank you. That's what I always wanted to be growing up, as a cool kid. All right, Dave, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, man.